Welcome to Every Night is Game Night, where two busy dads get games to the table by any means necessary. Check us out, along with other great podcasts, at dicetowernetwork.com.
Every Night is Game Night, episode 156, Post-GenCon 2019 Wrap-Up, Part 3, Mini Dice Games. Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome to Every Night is Game Night, the podcast that helps you get your head in the game. This is Jason.
And this is Anthony.
Yes, he's back for a second one. I can't believe it. Don't go away.
I got a few more in me. I don't know if they're going to get like preempted by other stuff, but I'm here. I'm here around.
I got a lot of stuff. There's a lot of Every Night is Game Night content coming. I have episodes planned until the end of the year. I can't believe we're going crazy over here.
Oh man, you got to send me a list of which one of those I'm on, because I don't even know.
Tell me what you play.
Yeah,
we'll squeeze you in. Anthony, rest assured, Anthony will be on for the next couple of episodes. We are arcing up in complexity. The last episode was about family games. This episode will be about dice games. So both simpler fare. As we move on, we'll be getting into some of the more complicated stuff, and then we'll obviously culminate in Anthony's hot and heavy Euros spectacular. That'll be the day where I just kind of sit there and watch you and whatever person I decide to bring on just geek out about heavy games. So I know you're looking forward to that one.
Yes, I've actually played all but one of these already, the ones we have on the list. Mm-hmm. So like, I'm going to be super prepared. It's going to be great. Usually when we do these, I'm like scrambling the week before. I'm like, I got to play these again. I don't remember the rules.
Don't reveal our secrets. How dare you?
I write notes. I have opinions, but they're really complicated games. So like describing them is difficult. But these are just some sizzle for you people who like the heavy stuff. It's some really good stuff coming up.
All right. So until then, we got some dice games coming for you. But before we get to the dice games, we're going to get to Liz and the Liz We Trust segment. There is a non-zero chance that we are talking about another dice game for the Kickstarter. Liz, what do you have in store for us?
Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and I'm here to encourage your Every Night is Game Night acquisition disorder. Today I want to talk about Detective City of Angels from Van Ryder Games, which is being reprinted with an expansion. My review will be coming out soon, but spoiler alert, I adore the game. In fact, I think it's something really special. In the multiplayer game, most players take on the role of detective and can gather evidence and interrogate suspects, with answers provided by another player called the Chisel, who essentially runs the game and tries to misdirect the detectives to make their job more challenging. In the solo or co-op game, players try to close cases while interacting with a game book that takes on the role of Chisel. Both ways to play are delightful, and after solving several cases solo and having a great time, I've also ended up playing Chisel and running the game for several groups of friends, which has given me some really good moments with other people as well. The new expansion for Detective City of Angels was an insta-back for me, and if you enjoy detective games, you absolutely must have a look at this one before the campaign closes on October 8th. Happy gaming!
So this is definitely one of those times where we're recording way ahead of schedule. We have no chance of knowing what Liz is going to be talking about, but hopefully it's great. In Liz we trust, as we like to say. So thank you very, very much, Liz. You come through for us every single week. All right, we are going to jump into some dice goodness. And it's actually, we have a couple of games, but at one point I'm going to just let Anthony rip with Roll and Write. Oh my God. I saw the list and like, okay, did you really play all these? Oh man.
Yeah, they're quick, man. Played a bunch.
He is going to review all of them. It is going to be solo. It's going to be 2-player. It's going to be multiplayer. It's going to Roll and Write for every single flavor, every single savor. I can't wait to press pause on my mic while Anthony goes through a whole bunch of them. Although there is one that I'm interested in hearing about, so we'll get to that in a second.
Just one? There's so many.
We will get to the one in a second, sir. All right, but we have 3 other games that we're going to be talking about, and I'll start us off. This game's not technically a dice game. There's only one die in this game, but I felt like it kind of fit into the motif of this episode. And I'm going to be talking about the game itself first. There is a controversy that I am not going to leave unaddressed, but I'm going to save that for the end of the episode. There are a lot of people who are curious about this game just as a game, and you can actually get it. You can get it on Amazon and some of the places where you can get games. I think I saw a copy at my local game store, which will enrage some people knowing that the game is available some places. But I really felt like the game itself deserved its own spotlight. If you want to hear more about the controversies and how I'm going to address it, please wait until the end of the episode. What is this game? If you know the controversy, you know exactly what I'm talking about, so won't be able to point any longer. This game is Unbroken, designed by Artem Safarov. He did do a preview series over here, and I've talked to him a couple times. He's a really good dude. Really excited to play his game. Published by Ultima Games, which is his imprint, and also Golden Bell Games. So in this game, the theme of it is you're an adventurer in a cave among a team looking for treasure. Your team was ambushed and slaughtered, and you were left for dead. And you, only you, this is a solo-only game, you will have to survive, starting with absolutely nothing, and find your way out to the surface. So it is a very quick card and dice-based, or die-based, resource management game. You don't build up too much. This isn't like a deck builder like Friday. This game has a lot of lineage from Friday in that you're getting better, but also getting worse and blah, blah, blah. And you're kind of this in that solo adventurer type mindset, but you don't really build up. You build up a little bit, you get a little weapon. Your player area is 2 boards and they have sliders. And the sliders track different resources. So the global resource is kind of like effort. So, representing how much am I going to try for certain things? So they kind of resource that out. You can also have meat, your food, you have knife, you have wood, you have different resources that you're trying to manage. And the core of the game is you're going to be pulling 2 cards from an exploration deck. And the exploration deck is very, very big in this game. You pull 2 cards, and both of those cards will offer you some kind of adventuring choice, right? So one card might say you run into dryads, and the dryads are hungry. If you give them food, they will give you wood. So, and it takes you 2 times. So time is also a resource in this game. And every single card is like that. It's a trade. So you do this multiple times per turn. And the first round is very short, then it gets longer and longer and longer. You're going to be doing many, many of these trades. You pull 2 cards, you make a trade. Okay, now I'm low on meat. I know I'm going to need food, so I don't want to trade my food, but this is a great trade. Or, I'm going to get some treasure. I got some treasure out of this trade. And there's so many different ways in which you just manage your your resources in order to be able to defeat the different levels. So the game has 4 levels, has a boss at every level, and that's where the die comes in. You're going to be rolling on the boss's chart, and the boss kind of attacks you, and depending on what resources you have, hit you in your resources. And hopefully you've either planned well ahead and can beat the boss, or you just bribe him, which is a very old school thing to do. Back when, players were not expected to beat everything, like in first edition D&D, you used to have to be afraid of the troll because you had 4 hit points and the troll could hit you for 1d6. So here, have a bribe, have a chunk of meat or whatever it is. So it actually includes some of that old school feeling. You do that for 4 rounds, and hopefully you're good enough to beat the final boss, and away we go. As a game, what do I think? My thematic brain, my right side of my brain, there's some complicated stuff going on. This is a very simple kind of abstract core. You pull up 2 cards, you make a decision, discard, and you just keep on going and going and going and going. That is, that it's hard to kind of get into the sense of a story when that's really all you're doing. And it gets kind of repetitive after a little while because you're making the same choice. Hard to get that sense of adventure from just the core mechanism. It's there to be simple, and I'll talk about how simple the game is in a second. Where the theme comes in is the kind of the extraneous stuff. The little bits of flavor that the cards have. So, the dryads, offering you wood. And you have skill power-ups. At one point, one of the skill power-ups I got in one game was eat moss. You could eat wood instead of food. And I got a real kick out of that, and I ended up beating the final monster with like 8 wood and nothing else because I just could eat wood. It's the only thing, and I could kind of sense that. I can kind of like wrap a mind around that. It's so like dumb, but it still made me kind of tickle because it's an adventuring thing to do. Feed your people, so to speak. You have to eat a bunch of food at the end. If you eat food, you get effort. There's a lot of thematic wrinkles around a central, unthematic, strategic, streamlined core. And I thought that was a pretty good way to go because you don't want this fiddly experience. Like a lot of these thematic games end up being very fiddly. I mean, Anthony would be the first to tell you, he doesn't want to play an overly thematic game that just like weighs the game down with a bunch of stuff to like immerse you, quote unquote. It's nice to have a simple game, and it's nice to kind of just have thematic moments kind of leap out at you to make the game memorable. So I thought that the game achieved a pretty good balance on that end in terms of like, how it managed its theme. Mechanism wise, it's simple. I like simple. This game reminded me of the Lost Expedition, which was an excellent game. One of Anthony's favorites. Won our Short Game of the Year award a couple of years ago. Lost Expedition did. I like this one better. In terms of the resource trades, in terms of how easy it is to run, in terms of the wacky kooky things that you can get into, but resolving them quickly. And so I thought that it was, on that level, really, really satisfying. I've heard the criticism that there's not a lot going on. It is repetitive, yes. If you don't buy the theme, if you don't buy into like the thematic stuff, if you just all you're looking at is the card draw, there might not be not much there for you. But if you like the combination of the two and the resource part of it, then I think there's actually a lot of game there. Anthony, you liked the Lost Expedition. Was it because of that resource trading that appealed to you?
Yeah. I always felt like I had some like flexibility in how I approached everything. Like it was a very thinky. It felt like a puzzle every time through. Like, and this game, like, it looks interesting to me. Like, I have some previous history with this particular publisher, even before all the other stuff has come up.
Which we'll get to. Don't worry. I'm separating the game from the stuff on purpose, guys. We'll get to that.
Yeah. So I'm like, just from my perspective, that's the reason I haven't played this, haven't picked it up. It has nothing to do with the designer of the game. I'm interested in giving it a shot when I have a chance to. But I can see how it would fit kind of a similar mold. Yeah,
and I was really charmed by it. Is it the best game that I've played this year? I don't know. I'm actually going to talk about another game that I like better from this year in a couple of games that we talk about here. But this one's really solid, and I'm a little bit sad that it's gotten wrapped up in all this stuff. But as a game itself, I enjoyed it. It had adventure. It had whimsy. Weird stuff happens. It has it's repetitive, but you can actually wrinkle up how you approach it. Sometimes you build up your weapon, you become like this big, axe wielding killing machine. Sometimes you don't gear up your weapon at all, and you'd use alternatives. The game gives you that flexibility. Sometimes you go in with a lot of treasure, and sometimes you have nothing. And you barely scrape by. The game gives all that stuff to you in a simple mechanical core that's repeatable, that you can play over and over again. That's another underrated thing about these types of games. Are they resettable easy? This one, yes. You can bang out 4, 5 games if you really, really wanted to. So positive recommendation for Unbroken. I really hope the game overcomes its problems and is able to deliver on a co-op expansion and all the different plans that Artem has. But for now, a recommendation. All right, so we are going to get to now. So that was a die game. Now single die. So now we are going to get to more and more dice chucking. So Anthony has the first. Actually, this one is not quite a roll and write. It is, and it isn't. We'll explain that in a second. But I was eager about this one because the designer is Matt Leacock. The game is Era, Medieval Age.
Yes, it is. And like when they first announced it, I was like, ooh, Matt Leacock's making a roll and write. And then I remembered he already did that. He did that a long time ago. And it was one of the first games I actually played, Roll Through the Ages. And this game takes a lot of mechanics from Roll Through the Ages and just kind of streamlines some of them and greatly expands upon others. The idea here is that you are building a medieval city. Everybody has their own player board, mat, sheet, whatever, full of pegs. And you will be rolling dice and building different things and kind of filling out your city based on a variety of different resources you're going to pick up. And if you've played Roll Through the Ages, as you're playing, specific mechanics throughout the game are going to feel very familiar. So I'll get back to that a little bit later. But you can see the pedigree there, and you can also see like how he just kind of picked and pulled what he was going to put in. The game is fairly simple in terms of mechanics. So you have 4 resource tracks. 3 of them are going to let you buy different things in the game. The 4th is food, and you need food to feed your quote-unquote dice, represent like the workers that you have in the city. Certain buildings that you build are going to give you more dice on top of the 4 that you start with. And so you can build up a pool of however many dice you want based on the buildings you build, but you have to feed each one of them at the end of the round. So you have to produce enough food every single turn to pay for all those dice. So just something to keep in mind. Another mechanic that's familiar to those who played Roll Through the Ages is there are these disease icons that can turn into various bad things throughout the game, little skull icons. And if you get 1, bad for you, you get 2, bad for the other person. You get 3, bad for you, you get 4, bad for the other. Like it varies depending on the exact number of those icons you get on your total turn. The person who gets hurt the most will change, which is very, very much Roll Through the Ages, right? So like at the basic level, you have 1, you just have to take 1 disease point, which is just a negative point at the end of the game. Not a big deal. Everybody's going to get a bunch of those. But as you level up and get higher, you can start losing buildings. You can start scorching areas of your board, which is like this big square that just takes up a chunk of space. You can lose, just all sorts of things happen to you. Or you can do some of those things to other people. So it's always an interesting mechanic. I liked it, also didn't like it in the original game and Roll Through the Ages. But I think it works here pretty well. A little bit of take that in a roll and write is kind of interesting. The buildings are probably the centerpiece of the game, though. There are, I can't remember exactly how many. It's something like 15 different types of buildings in this game. And each of them corresponds to, first, a different like combination of resources you need to build them. So if your dice show those resources in a round and you can add them to your board, you can then spend them and build something. There are build icons on your dice as well, so you'll need to roll those to be able to build things. But the cool thing there is you can build multiple things in a round if you've like stacked up a bunch of resources and you manage to roll the right building icons. The buildings themselves, like I said, some of them, like the churches and the farms and the lumber mills, they're going to give you, simple, small benefits. So you get new dice, you can get free resources every round, things like that. The bigger buildings, like the university and the cathedral, those are going to have bigger ongoing effects. So like, for example, the hospital, anything adjacent to that is immune to some of the bad things that can happen, right? The university is an endgame scoring condition that's going to help you score based on the culture that you've accumulated. There are walls in the game as well. You can place these around your city. If you manage to fully enclose buildings in your city, then those become worth twice as many points at the end of the game. So that's a thing you almost certainly want to do. It is decently long for what it is. Like, if we're talking about this game in the same conversation as a roll and write, which those games tend to be 20 to 30 minutes, this one can take an hour and a half, depending on how focused people are.
This is why I wanted to talk about this one separately, because it can be really long.
It is very long, and I honestly, like, I enjoyed all the mechanics and the first half of the game. The first time I played it, I was like, this is great. I'm having fun. And towards the end, I'm like, is this not over yet? And not like it overstayed its welcome, but it's not a particularly complex game. And it's, when you play so many roll and writes and they're all very quick and snappy, this game it's so much. It's so long, right?
It's not that it's long, it's that the growth rate is flat. Like, you're doing kind of the same thing at the end as you are at the beginning with a couple of numbers added. It's not like it spikes up. If it spiked up and it did like, combo, you did like, 20 food and like, it's not that, that'd be cool, but it doesn't do that.
Yeah, and it's a weird thing because it takes things from Roll Through the Ages, which is a shorter game, and it somehow makes them a little bit more open-ended. I still like it quite a bit. I find it hard to recommend it, though, for actually 3 separate reasons. One, it's kind of long. Like I said, for the weight of the game, this is like it says 2 on BGG, maybe a little bit lighter. It's, and they're saying 45 minutes to an hour. I say it's over an hour, easy. 2, it's $70.
Oh.
Because you've got all these plastic pieces,
Yep.
right? It's basically like a Lego version of a roll and write, which is really cool, and I love that, except I can't recommend anybody spend $70 on a roll and write. So, right?
Mm-hmm.
And third, some of the components, like the boards you actually play on, are pure yellow, almost impossible to read. Like, you'll be squinting at these things the entire time I'm playing. I'm going to stain mine. Like, I'm going to put some kind of coating on them so I can actually see the icons on them, because you can't see the numbers very easily. You're squinting a lot. And I'm sure if you play it enough, that won't be an issue. But out of the box, I don't know why they're like this.
Yeah.
It's a small, like, quibble, but it, like, honestly put me over the edge from recommending the game, because I'm just like, what is this? Why would you do it this way?
If you're paying $70 for a game, it needs to really hit all the component parts.
So much so, yeah. So I enjoy the game. I liked playing it. I'm giving it a dodge overall, just because of the price and the overproduction and the length of the game for what it does. I am still interested in seeing like what the other games in this series do, because this is only the first of like the roll and build series that Leacock is working on.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how they could bring the price down with like where they're setting the bar here with production, but we'll see what they can do. It is fun. If you get a chance to play it, I do recommend you play it. I just don't recommend you buy it.
I mean, so a couple things. One thing I liked, I love my thematic ties. My right brain is happy. At the walls, I love that they bothered to kind of get enough of the medieval sensibility to recognize that medieval cities had walls, and they were really important. So walls are the most boring part of a city. They could be the most boring part of a game, but they made it a integral part of the game by the point scoring, by the defenses. So, if you do that, the attacking thing, and you have walls, you can adequately defend stuff. I for whatever reason, I was tickled by that. Maybe I'm just like a medieval guy from studying the time period, but yes, you actually cared. And that is a wrinkle that I don't see in a lot of roll and writes. There's not a lot of space to fit that there. Is it worth playing this game for an hour and a half because of that? I don't know. Like you said, the tickle wore off by about like half hour, 45 minutes. It had a lot of Tiny Towns vibe. Did you play Tiny Towns?
I love Tiny Towns. It takes 20 minutes. Great.
Like in terms of the actual actions of like fitting the buildings in the geometric spots, so you get points for adjacency, and you have to fit in, that you have I think the hospital's like a cross, and if you could stick it right in the middle of a slum with a bunch of buildings, that's satisfying, which is evocative of what happens in Tiny Towns. But again, Anthony just said it, Tiny Towns, 20 minutes, this game is a lot longer than that. I like hearing you talk about it. Like I was initially coming into it, was like, yeah, I could recommend it, but hearing what you talked about it, I'm like, yep. Oh, okay.
It's hard because like if I brought it to game night tomorrow, I would be happy to play it. Like I already have it, so I'm happy to play it. I just wouldn't if everybody else is looking at it and be like, no, don't buy it. You can borrow mine. Like it's
right.
Not,
right.
I
Definitely
like
a
the
group
most
purchase.
Exactly. It's like the most integrative, interesting like roll and write style of game I've played in a little bit. But not enough so to recommend it, despite the flaws that I'd mentioned. It's disappointing, but it's still a good game in there. It's like a weird review for me. Like, yeah, I'm happy to have it, but can't recommend it for other people.
Yeah, I've had games like that.
Yep.
That are like, that hit me in my bullseye, but I recognize that barriers for other people. Okay, so that was Era Medieval Age. I'm going to move on to another dice game. This guy has more dice than one. So this is a true dice game. So this is Mageling. Mageling was designed by Joseph Butler, published by Familiar Games. I believe this is their first crack at publishing a game. So this is a small box dice placement engine building adventure game. We have one of those already. All those words apply to a game which was like a behemoth among solo players especially. But, in the general gaming culture, you kind of know what this is. One deck dungeon. So, small box, dice placement, engine building, adventure. So, what do we need another one? If people are already playing that, the app is popular, all that kind of stuff. This one does a bunch of different things that, I think this one merits a look if you enjoy One Deck Dungeon. So this one is more of an adventure. So in One Deck Dungeon, you only have the deck and it just kind of like told you you're going deeper in a dungeon, but really you're just laying out a tableau of cards. This one, you have a separate row of cards representing different locations and then a standee representing progress on those locations. So as you go deeper in to whatever is happening in the adventure, it's giving you the actual separate cards that are separate from the deck, different backs, different everything. And you're going through this kind of like Feywild-esque, spooky colors and everything is kind of like that in that spooky fairy type vibe. I really enjoyed the art. It's funny, like I don't know if I enjoyed the art, but I definitely enjoyed the vibe and the color scheme. It definitely gave you a sense of, this kind of different world that they've created just for this game. And there's a lot of flavor text. You could tell they put a lot of world building into the setting of the place. So mechanically, what you're doing is it kind of like runs like a deck builder. So you have a river of cards that comes out, and each of the cards is activated by a special custom die. So, there's moon and there's leaf or whatever it is. And what you do is you acquire the card into your personal tableau. So it's not a deck, it's you tableau builder. And along the way, as you build your tableau, you'd be rolling these 5 custom dice and you could be activating 1 card per die. And, you start, you're dinky, you activate 1 card, you get energy, you get gems, and those you use that either to acquire more cards or to progress through the adventure. And as you acquire more cards in your tableau, you are going to be able to chain and combo things. So like you can put your die on a card that says activate another card with this symbol. So like you get 2 activations for 1 die. You get dice, a little bit of dice manipulation, not too much of it. You can mess with the discard pile. You get all sorts of different effects that you get from these cards and just kind of like grow it. In the solo/cooperative, you have like 13 rounds, more or less, do your thing. So you have a little bit of time to grow your tableau of cards up to 8, which is the max, and also progress through. Thematically, as I was mentioning before, I'm really happy with this game. I really, really wanted to like it. One Deck Dungeon has terrible art. It's not terrible. I shouldn't say that, but it's very, run of the mill, generic. Here's a 5-headed monster. Here's a ooze, and they're kind of like, very, essential casting type monsters. Here, they put a lot of effort into the vibe of the world. It looks great. I love the adventuring aspect of it. It has that that sense of progression, through a wonderland. And it's just cards. So it's, but at least it does enough to point me in the right direction. I really, really wanted to like this game based off of the thematics and the vibe and the art. Mechanically, when I first played it, I didn't like it so much. But then I I'm like, let me try it again. I got to play it a couple times. I posted on the Mageling review board. What am I doing wrong? I got some feedback from the designer. They said, okay, point me in the right direction. A couple of the players chimed in. I learned to play. It went from a 6 rating to a 7 to an 8 to a 9.
Okay. But should the average consumer have to jump through that many hoops to get a game to go from a 6 to a 9? That's...
Or maybe it was just me. Maybe I was like, because I had done it while I was moving, so I just didn't grok the game initially. Oh my God. Maybe I undersold it. Maybe I just need to put a little more emphasis again. This game is amazing. I love it. Oh my goodness. Once I realized how to roll, once I realized how to take advantage of rerolls, because that's kind of the main manipulation. Once I recognized what card combos are effective, what card combos are kind of like not so effective, what card combos are traps. Once I won the game different ways. So one game, I had a tableau where I used 2 dice and activated all my cards. Very satisfying. Another game, my tableau was like 3 cards, but I manipulated the discard pile. Totally different way to win. Like I said before, there's not as much dice manipulation as there is in a one-deck dungeon. In one-deck dungeon, you can really get started very, very soon with turning a 1 into a 6 and turning this one die into 2 other dice and just going from there. Here, not so much. You might just roll your way and not do anything. It happens, and I think that might be a barrier for some people. But once you figure out kind of the odds of what you can get and what cards you should look for earlier and later and all that kind of stuff, when it opens up to you, oh my God, the depth. Doesn't have a lot of complexity, but it has a lot of depth in the simple yet rewarding decisions that you make as you learn how to play more and more. I still play this game. I've done the campaign many, many times. I think I have about 30 plays at this point under my belt. This is my favorite solo card game. Calling it now. I freaking love Mageling. I'm sorry. I feel like I was warming up. I thought I was gonna build to a good review. I didn't know that I was giving the impression that I didn't like it. Sorry.
It was a pretty long build, man. I was like, oh, this doesn't sound very good.
No, seriously, man. This game is fantastic. I love it. How much did you enjoy One Deck Dungeon?
It was fine.
Okay. What makes you say fine as opposed to better than fine?
I don't know. I just felt like it was just kind of brutally tough in certain ways based on the dice rolls. I don't know. I just didn't to get it right took a lot of certain things to happen, and they just didn't always happen, and it just was very frustrating.
Sometimes you had an initial board lay that just seemed impossible. You're
exactly.
a rogue and there's a bunch of blue and yellow, no red. So it's ugh, I have to slog my way through a couple of injuries just to get things going. Yeah. And so that became frustrating, and it happened more often than not, blah, blah, blah. This one doesn't quite have that high a barrier. I think the barrier was just, can you learn to play? And once you learn to play, it's amazing. And your criticism is probably, important. And the designer actually recognized that. He was like, I'm afraid to give this to reviewers because this is not a 1 or 2 and done. I designed this to be complicated to reward investment, and that might screw me. So
people don't play games like that anymore. That's a tough one.
He kind of knew it. It doesn't open itself up immediately, but once you get into it, Mageling, my friends, Mageling, go out and check this game out if you're a solo player at all. I can't really speak to the competitive, but it is similar, so whatever. But I really, really dig this game. Will be in my collection forever. I'm actually playtesting the expansion pretty soon. I never do that. I never do that. I never play a game and say, okay, let me play test the expansion. But I did it here. Fantastic. Mageling.
All right. Awesome. I got to check that out now. It was a big emotional swing. The first half of the review, I'm glad I missed it. Now I'm no, I missed it.
So now Anthony is going to run through as many roll and write games as he wants.
Yeah, until I get tired of doing it.
We don't have time for a billion long explanations. Let's hear about it, man. Let's do it.
Yeah. So I went to GenCon with the explicit desire to pick up as many of these as I could. I did not get every roll and write that was on the floor, but I got a bunch. So what I've done to keep this short and not ridiculously long, I'm not going to go through mechanics. I'm just going to tell you kind of the spiel of the game, and then whether it's worth getting or not. And to help with that, I've put it in order from the one I like the least to the one I like the most. So we'll just kind of build from the bottom up. And I will say 2 or 3 of these, not a huge fan of, but most of them are pretty good. So for people who like roll and writes, I'm going to stipulate that, of course, multiple times throughout. If you don't like roll and writes, I'm not sure there's a ton here for you on any of these because they're still all roll and writes. But we'll run through them. We'll see if anything sparks an interest for you. So first up, Bricks. This is from Wolfgang Warsch. This is the guy behind Gonstrom Clever, which is the biggest roll and write in the world. And I was not super impressed with it. So
yeah, I was Wolfgang Warsch is at the beginning of this list. Oh man,
it's not great. It is his take on Tetris. So you have your sheet looks like a video game score sheet, and you'll have different based on the dice you roll, different shapes that are going to come out. But you can't rotate the shapes unless you build up the energy to spend to rotate them. So it's not really like Tetris. So a lot of the times you just, oh, well, there's nowhere good to place this. That stinks. It's like playing Tetris if you don't realize you can press the A button. It's not particularly fun. Actually unlocking those various energy points can be difficult because of how you have to place some of these tokens. Solo, multiplayer, whatever, it's all the same. It's fine, but it's not nearly his best roll and write. It's a cool idea, just not super well executed. So bricks, a dodge. Unfortunately, I was excited for this one, but it was not a lot of fun for me.
Mm-hmm.
Next up is Second Chance. This is from Uwe Rosenberg. He actually has a couple on the list here.
Some heavyweights, man. What are these up with these roller rights attracting the big wigs?
Well, to be fair, Uwe Rosenberg doesn't really make heavy games anymore. So it's been a few years since Feast for Odin, and he's just in a whole bunch of light stuff. And this one is kind of in the theme and like look of his recent like puzzle games, like Cottage Garden and the autumn ones. So it's the idea here is you have a 9x9 grid. You're going to flip 2 cards, and you choose which of the shapes you want to draw, and you draw them on your sheet. They're little puzzle pieces, and you're trying to fill in as much of your sheet as you can, right? There are a few different ways you can kind of manipulate this. There's a second chance mechanic where you can draw an extra card just for yourself. If you can complete it, great. If you can't, you're eliminated. So it's got some cool ideas to it, but there's just not much here. It does solve the problem where not everybody gets the exact same thing to draw, which is often a challenge in these types of games, but not enough so to really make it interesting. I played it several times, and most of the time I could fill my grid almost completely. So it wasn't actually very challenging of a game, and there didn't seem to be a lot of ways to make it more challenging. So it's not bad. It's just kind of forgettable, which a lot of roll and writes fall into, unfortunately, and this one does as well. So it's just kind of I feel like it was, he woke up one morning, he's like, I have a clever idea. They made a whole game out of it, and it's like, yeah, that's a clever idea. So next up on the list is Deadly Doodles. This is from Steve Jackson Games. I didn't know this existed until I just kind of stumbled on it at GenCon. They had a whole bunch and were launching it big, and it actually has some decent ratings. People seem to like it. The idea here is you have a dungeon board. It is a whiteboard, and you got a little whiteboard pen, which is nice. I feel like the more companies do this, the better. Make it a whiteboard, make it replayable. Don't make me waste all this paper. It drives me crazy. You're going to flip multiple cards. They're going to have various shapes on them that you're going to draw onto your dungeon board. And you're trying to like connect various things. So there's like, you'll connect a certain weapon that will attack a certain monster. So like the sword over here on the bottom left maybe is needed to attack the monster up here in the top right. And you have to connect those so that you can ultimately get them and get the points. It's a cool idea. I like it. Everybody gets kind of the same tiles throughout the structure though. So it's not particularly like, obviously people are going to make different decisions. These games tend to do that, but at the end of the day, there's not a ton of variability, and the sheets end up looking fairly similar game after game because they are laminated. So you're not going to have like different locations for different monsters and things. The cards come up in different order, but the game feels kind of samey after a few plays. I do like this one a little bit better than some of the other ones for that reason, though. Like, it's kind of a cool idea. I'd love to see this kind of built out into more dynamic of a game. But as it is, it doesn't have a ton of replayability, so it's hard to recommend above like a play. Give it a shot, but don't pick it up necessarily because it'll get boring. I feel like after maybe half a dozen plays.
So I remember when there was a time when I was young and naive. This was 2001 and 2002 maybe. Steve Jackson had just come out with Munchkin, and when I played Munchkin, I'm like, woohoo! I love Munchkin. Man. Loved it. It was great. So then I was like, okay, Steve Jackson, I got to check out all the things that this guy's going to release. And I got every crappy game that he released for years. And I'm thinking, no, they're all terrible. Why should I? But he's going to make another Munchkin, isn't he? And I guess 19 years later, I'm still waiting.
Yeah. This is better than I expected for Steve Jackson because, like you said, a lot of their games are just like Hey, that's a game.
Hey, it's cards. All right, great.
Right? Like, if it had more variability, I think I'd like it a lot. It's just, it got very samey very fast.
Okay.
Okay, so next up we have Dizzle. This is from Schmidtspiel, who does all the Wolfgang Warsch games, but not Wolfgang Warsch. It's designer Ralph Zerlinde, and it's Stronghold Games here in the U.S. So the idea of this game is you have a big pool of dice. They're all the same. You're going to roll them for everybody, and you're going to draft them based on the positions on your personal board. So you'll look at your sheet, and wherever the X's are at the start of the round, you can place a die adjacent to any of the spots you've already crossed off. But after that, you have to place dice adjacent to those dice. So you'll draft a die, place it on your sheet. On the sheet, it has to match the pips of the die, and you just keep doing that until you can't do it anymore. There are a couple ways you can kind of jumpstart that a little bit, move around the map. There are bonus points that you can pick up for things like gems and different icons and stuff. The really interesting thing about this game, though, and it's speaking to the replayability aspect, is there are multiple levels. So the level 1 sheets will have like a couple of bombs, which, you know, in the solo mode, they're just bonus points, but in the multiplayer, they let you like blow up other people's spaces and give them negative points, which is kind of a cool idea. Gems that give you bonus points, puzzle pieces that give you bonus points. But as you get to higher levels, there'll be things like, here's a key, and you cross out the key, and now you can cross out the lock over here. And if you cross out the key and the lock of the same color, bonus points, right? So you have to think very carefully about where you're placing your dice on this sheet, because it will determine, ultimately, how many points you get from different things. You also get bonus points for filling in certain columns and certain rows. Not all of them, but some of them, the long ones. It was a very surprisingly clever game, considering what it was. Because it's roll dice, put them on your sheet. That's all it is. But there's a lot of things that kind of go into that. And determining when you're going to take a die, where you're going to put it, how you're going to place it. Very, very cool ideas. The solo in this one's actually pretty clever as well. You'll roll 8 dice, and then on the non-player turn, you'll roll 2 dice and just take out any dice from the pool that are matching. So sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes you get really unlucky, which is fairly similar to playing against other players who take the dice you want, right? Mm-hmm. I like this one quite a bit. So I do recommend this one. I don't know how accessible it is yet, but I feel like, you know, for a $15 quick roll and write, if you're looking for something like that, this one's really good.
That is
Dizzle.
I can't believe that's a word. I can't believe that's a game. Oh my goodness.
It is. Dizzle. It's
like faux shizzle, my dizzle.
Yep. Dizzle. Dizzle. That's a board game name, you guys. That's for real thing. All right. Next one is the other Uwe Rosenberg roll and write. This is Patchwork Doodle. I think I like this one a lot more than some other people based on the ratings and based on the people I played it with. But I really do like this one quite a bit. It is a roll and write interpretation of Patchwork. So you'll have a sheet, again, 9x9, just like Second Chance. And instead in this game, though, you're going to have a circle of cards similar to what you have in Patchwork. So you can see all the available patterns. You will then roll a die and move a little worker that many spaces, and you'll take that specific tile and you're going to draw it on your sheet. But there are a few like bonus abilities you're going to have in the game that let you do things like you can take the card before or after the one that you rolled, or you can cut a piece into multiple. So you take the card and like mentally cut it up and place part of that shape somewhere on your map. You can fill in a 1x1 space, or you can take an action multiple times. So some flexibility there in how you draw things out. I had a lot of fun with this one. I thought it was quick. It was clever. It has like the Patchwork feel, like that you're moving around the thing and you can see everything that's out there. It comes with colored pencils, which is really cool. So if it encourages you to like draw your patterns in if you want. You don't have to, but you can if you want to. I don't know. It was very charming for a roll and write. And it's not something you see very often. Often they're very themeless, abstract nothings. Like I just mentioned Dizzle. There's nothing there. It's like a Wolfgang Warsch style themeless game. This one is just, I don't know, it has a little bit more to it, and I had a lot of fun with it. That's Patchwork Doodle. All right. So I'm on to the top two. These two I would wholly recommend easily. They're very good. The first of them is On Tour. This is from Chad Deshawn. It's Board Game Tables. I will say up front, it's a bit overproduced, so it's kind of expensive for a roll and write game. And part of that is like you have big, like tarot-sized cards. You have these big, giant maps. They're all laminated with dry erase. It's very, very nice to play with, but it's decently expensive. The idea of the game, though, is you have two very large D10s. These are the largest D10s I've seen in a board game. They're very big.
Not a lot of D10s in a board game at all. How many board games do you know have D10?
Not many, but these are huge, man. You could hurt someone with them. They're big.
Don't step on them.
No, God, no. So what you do is you roll those two D10s. You have two numbers, and you will have, so let's say you roll a 3 and a 7. You will now have the numbers 37 and 73. You have to draw them on your map of the United States based on the cards you drew. So you'll draw 3 cards, and there'll be things like north, central, south, east. And then each of those cards will have like a specific state on them. So you have to draw it in one of the regions it's showing, and you get a bonus if you draw it in the specific state it's showing. And you do both numbers. So it could be like north and it's showing Minnesota. So you draw 37 in Minnesota, you circle it to show that you get the bonus, right? The goal of the game is to create a path through the country that ascends from the lowest possible number to the highest possible number. And you're trying to pass through the most possible states, and ideally the most like circled states as you go. So that's how you're going to score your points. You get 1 point for every state that you visit, and you get a bonus point for each of those states that's circled. There is a mechanic as well, like if you roll doubles or if you draw 3 cards that are the same region, you can just put a star anywhere you want on the map to send that indicates that you didn't have anything you could work with. So, hey, you got a star. It is decently difficult because you are trying to very carefully place these numbers in different places, manage it, remember which cards are still ready to come out of the deck. Like, okay, I haven't seen Kansas yet, so maybe that'll come out and I can place that in here. I really, really enjoyed this one. It was a lot of fun. It is very flexible in terms of player count. Like, I think it comes with 4 boards, like the big foldable dry erase boards, but the box is really big, so you can fit up to 12, I think they say, in the box. And it plays pretty much identical with 1 player. So it's just all from 1 all the way up to 12, pretty much the same game. I had a lot of fun with this one. I wish it wasn't quite so overproduced, so I could recommend it to people like who are just looking for a quick roll and write. Because
I definitely feel like that's a trend. We've been saying that more this year than when we first started the podcast. Like overproduced, overpriced, da da da.
Yeah, no, I mean I've reviewed like over on BG. I think I reviewed 2 or 3 games this summer that went from buys down to plays because it cost too much. And that's important for me to like include that because people are on a budget. You can't just go spend $100 in a game.
Yeah, I mean, I think because I think I've heard a little bit of blowback about people saying, "Well, you're complaining about the price, blah blah." Well, like all these board game prices are up 10 to 15 to $20 depending on what it is. They're all over the board. Like these games that you could get for $60 is now $70, $75. My salary did not go up.
No, yeah, yeah, and it's like in some cases, like in this case of this game, I think it's $40, and the stuff you get in the box, you're like, okay, I can see why it costs more. I just don't know why they overproduced it to the level where this is what I have to pay for this. Like, right. The cards don't need to be tarot size. They could be normal card size. They could be welcome to, mechanic size, where that's a $25 game. If this was a $25 game, I'd say go buy it. It's amazing. It's just
like right now.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's up there with welcome to for me in terms of like mechanics. But it's a little more pricey, and you can't play with more than 4 out of the box because they did go with the boards, which I do prefer, but it does limit it a little bit. So it's right. Game-wise, we're just talking only about the game. This game's fantastic. Play it, buy it if you find it. We're talking about like the logistics of it. It's a little overpriced. It's hard to recommend.
Right.
So that brings me to the last game, which is easy to recommend on both counts because it's fantastic.
I don't know what it is. Let me guess.
Okay.
Is it Is it the game that I'm thinking of that I mentioned at the very beginning of the episode? Is it Cartographers?
Yes.
Yes. So you wondered why I was like only looking forward to one. Well, it's your number one, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is... I mentioned like on tour, that's up there with Welcome To for me. Cartographers, better. So,
Yes.
This is like the best roll and write I've played this year, possibly the last couple of years. I love this game. It was so much fun. It is just the way it flows, and it doesn't have all these other issues. Like, it's not overproduced. It's not all these extra things. It's accessible. It's quick. It's $20. There's nothing to stop me from recommending you go buy this game. The idea of the game is you are a cartographer. You are drawing a map, and it's going to be based on these cards that you draw from the deck. But it has like this cool scoring mechanism, similar to like if you've played Isle of Skye, where there's 4 different scoring options, and then each of the different seasons you're going to score 2 of them, right? So you might score AB, and then BC, and then AD, and then BD. So you have to plan ahead, but also try to be tactically smart about what you're doing this round to maximize your points every single round. But then there's also a cool mechanic where you draw monster cards. And if you're playing with multiple players, you will take their sheets and draw a monster on it and like mess up their stuff. It's awesome.
That's my favorite part.
It's so good. And then you get your sheet back and you're like, come on, man. So,
that's amazing.
It's so good. And then you're trying to manipulate where you place things around ruins in relation to each other. You don't know how many cards are going to come out per round because it's based on like the point values of each card that comes up. You might not see the card you're looking for. Like the card deck is relatively limited. There's only 12 of them. But if all the points come out early, maybe you don't see the specific one you need for your scoring this round. So you have to really think ahead. I like this game a lot. I absolutely recommend it. If you like roll and writes, you will like this game. So Cartographers is an easy recommendation for me.
We talked about Cartographers a little bit before with Liz and Jeremy. We talked about it in the context of Fleet, the dice game as well. I don't know if you've had a chance to play that one.
Yeah, I really like Fleet. I think of the two, I like this one a little better because it's shorter. But
right.
Fleet was a really solid game.
I think those are the two that are going to be in the running when we do our awards for short game, when people do their year-end awards for dice games, short games, or whatever. I think those are the two that really rise above. What do you think?
Yeah, I think if you asked me to rank my roll and writes, dice games, whatever for the year, those two would be the top 5 easy, probably top 2. Yeah.
Right. All right, so that was mini dice games. Thank you, my friend. I'm chiming in over here, having played 0 of these games.
Well, now you know which ones to avoid. So.
I have played Cartographers. I cannot wait to play more. So yeah, well, that is many dice games. If that's what you tune into ENGN for lots and lots of reviews, man, we give you a lot to chew on this episode. I did want to close this discussion out by addressing the controversy surrounding the first game that I discussed in the episode, which was Unbroken. So maybe you are not a part of board gaming internet and you don't know what's going on, which is a thing. I have to remind myself that there are people out there who don't troll Facebook and Twitter and all this other stuff. So Unbroken was kickstarted, and it was kickstarted at a very reasonable low price. I forget exactly what the price was. I think it was like in the 20s somewhere. And, they're like, oh, yeah, really aggressive about the pricing. And it's like, this is part of the deal. And, Archon was all over the place. He was on this podcast, everywhere, just, advertising the heck out of this game. He really believes in the design. And, we were really excited about it. It actually made the top 100 solo games before even released. I don't know if it's going to make it this year because of all the controversy, which is a shame. We'll talk about that when we get to top 100 solos this year. We'll see what happens. So, then the bad news starts. So the call went out that they severely underpriced the game. And, Artem he kind of takes partial responsibility for this. He and Golden Bell were partners in this endeavor. They agreed on the low pricing. If you want to hear more of Artem's story, go ahead and check out Solo BG. My friend Derek interviewed Artem, and he kind of breaks down a lot of the story from his perspective. So I'm getting it from there and also from Artem himself. So they totally underpriced it. And what ended up happening was they asked a lot of the backers to cover some of those costs. That in itself is a no-no. That is not something that people want to be about in terms of Kickstarter. Once you pay a price, you pay a price, and that's, many companies can figure out how to fulfill a game at their agreed upon price. What happened here? So that was the beginning of problems. Another one is Golden Bell itself. The people that run Golden Bell did not have positive interactions with the backers. So they very contentious, backers, and this is Kickstarter. So Kickstarter backers are very passionate. It's great when it goes well, not so great when it goes badly. So the backers were giving them the business, and there was a very heated back and forth. And Golden Bell did not take the high road. Let's just say that, and just pissed a lot of more people off, and. So just like degenerating, and the fans are getting madder and madder. Like the games are not being shipped. Eventually, Golden Bell figured out a solution for America, where they sent a lot of the games by media mail. Media mail is a thing that we have in America that's for like educators and teachers and such. So that it's a reduced price to get musicians, public service type stuff. Not for games. So what a lot of people got were envelopes with like a sheet of sheet music and then a game. And they could have gotten in so much trouble for this, but this is the only way they will be able to fulfill the game, at least to the American backers. So we're looking at it going, what is this? And what am I a party to, by accepting some of these things? So that's the facepalm moment right there. And then now you have a situation where the EU backers, they don't have the game. They don't have the game. And right now, there is no solution for how these EU backers who backed the game, what was it, a year ago? Maybe now more than a year ago? They don't have the game that they backed. And, people like me, are like, posting and saying, oh, we enjoy the game and everything. And the EU backers are going, well, I wish I could enjoy the game. I'm enjoying the prequel to Unbroken, which is unshipped. And, they're making all sorts of snarky comments like that. It's like, I thought that one was pretty funny. But in general, it's a disaster. And this is not to absolve anybody of blame. I think, on the publisher side, there was a lot of mistakes made, and they continue to be made because the standoff is just going on and on and on. The Golden Bell, Anthony has been in this business a lot longer than I have of reviewing games. Anthony has a couple of stories about Golden Bell, even independent of everything that's happening here that kind of raised some flags. I think we're going to skip that, right, my man?
Yeah, we don't need to drag all that stuff in. Like, that's not public knowledge, but it was not surprising to me, and there's a reason why I did not jump in on this Kickstarter or engage in it in any way when it first went up, despite the fact the game looks interesting. Because there's been a lot of flags.
Solo game, resource management, you like the Lost Expedition, it's basically kind of in your wheelhouse. And it's a shame that, you looked at the publisher, and even before all this happened, you're like, oh, okay. And it's bearing out, and they're going to have to figure out something. Artem is talking about putting up a GoFundMe where, he is going to raise costs to try to cover it and get people games so that this project can finally move. Golden Bell down. I stand with the European backers. This is a terrible situation, and I 100%. I have to be very sensitive to the fact that there's a lot of mad people out there, and these are the people who paid to make this game happen, and they have nothing to show for it, and they regret every minute of backing this game, and they're not offering refunds. That'd be one thing if they offered refunds, but there are no refunds coming, which is. The reason I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk on, this section is not to defend Golden Bell. No, believe me. Artem Safarov is, like I said, he's been on the show, and he interacted with him. He had a great interview that I mentioned before on the podcast. There's a lot of heat going at him. And I think there's this idea that he's kind of in cahoots with Golden Bell to try to either soak the backers of more money, or just that he somehow had a hand in the negative kind of interactions. And I hope that as a gamer community, we can try as much as we can to separate the designer from the publisher. I think that Artem is getting a lot of blowback, partly because he hasn't turned on Golden Bell. Like, we're mad. If you're really in solidarity with us, you would be as mad as we are. And I just feel like that's not a thing that is a reasonable thing to ask, because his baby, his thing that he spent years designing, is under contract. There's nothing he can do. And, and if you look at the Unbroken box, there's plans for expansion. That's in there. I don't know if that's getting worked on right now, but that belongs to them. That belongs to Golden Bell. What is he supposed to do? And so he's just absorbed a lot of negativity, absorbed a lot of heat. He's trying to make things better. He's, kind of going into his personal funds to try to make things better. It's funny to hear him, he'll send a message to the backers, "Hey, happy backers of Unbroken." And they'll comment be like, "We're not happy. How dare you call us happy?" And it just puts, someone who's trying to make the best of it in an even worse situation. So I know I might get in a little bit of trouble with this. I don't really care, because I care about Artem. And I think that he's a good dude. If people can find it in their hearts to kind of separate the designer from the publisher and try to realize that Artem is doing the best that he can in the situation, I personally am for. I back him up. I hope that he can kind of get out of this and continue to design and continue to do his own thing. I also stand with the European backers. I think they got screwed royally. I want to stand with you guys too. I hope that there's room to do both. And that's all I got to say about that. I really hope that we can find it in our hearts to separate designer from publisher and just kind of make the best of the situation. And I hope that the publisher and whoever else finds a way to get the games to those backers.
Hear, hear. I agree. Yeah. No, this happens too often. I think people pile on with the most visible public-facing part of an issue that they see, and frequently that person, individual, company, whatever it is, doesn't necessarily have anything to do with what you're angry about, Right. And it's not really fair. Board game design is art. These are artists, and they have to partner with companies, frequently separate from themselves, to get their art to the rest of the world. And sometimes they make the wrong decisions. Sometimes things happen, and it's not necessarily on them. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's not, though. And it's do your research and make sure that you understand what actually happened before you go after somebody, because you want to make sure that, you're being fair to all the parties involved.
Yeah, and, like I said before, maybe Artem is kind of because he's trying to be so positive, people are mistaking that for, well, I support the publisher. What else can he do? He can't light these people on fire like maybe he wants to. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. They have his babies. He's a hostage. I don't want to belittle it by using that parallel, but it kind of is. And he's just trying to do the best that he can. And, there's a lot of people in the board gaming community that have expressed a lot of love for Artem. I'm a little bit late to the party here, at least in a public way, but I'm going to put my hat in that ring. I stand with Artem. I also stand with the European backers and all the other people around the world that did not get the game. So I think that both of those things can happen. If you don't think that both of those things can happen, then I don't know. I don't know what I could say, but at least when it comes to at least the designer side, as Anthony was saying, he's a piñata, and please, let's figure out another way.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so that was the whole episode. All right, are we ready to step up in complexity for the next one?
Yeah, dude, I'm always ready. Who are you at? Who are you talking to right now?
Red meat.
Am I ready? Are you ready? That's the real question.
I am going to fully participate in at least the next episode, sir.
Okay.
We actually have a couple of episodes that'll going to get jammed in between this. I'm not really sure how the order is going to go, but we will have Anthony back. He will be talking about heavy games. If you want to reach out to us, ENGN_podcast on the Twitter, Every Night's Game Night Facebook group, everynight'sgamenight.com. On the One Stop Co-op Shop side, we have a fan group. The link for the fan group is in the show notes. If you don't know Slack, it is a messaging service. It's just like a big forum. People can chat and participate and all that kind of thing. Board Games Anonymous also has a Slack that you can go in and participate over there. Their Slack is linked to a Patreon. So if you want to go check out the Board Games Anonymous Patreon, go ahead and do that as well. So Anthony, I think I covered everything, right, man?
Oh yeah, that's all the stuff.
I should mention rating. I haven't mentioned rating in a couple episodes, right? We haven't gotten a new rating since 2018, so we should probably do that.
Come on, guys. I know you're out there because I can see the numbers. I know there's a lot of you, and most of you have not rated. So come on.
That's true. Most of you indeed have not rated. Go ahead and go give us a rating on iTunes. 5 stars or how many stars you think we deserve. All right, until next week, go ahead and grab a game off of that shelf, and let's make every night a game night.